The United States educational system requires all children from the ages of 6 to 16 or upon graduation to attend school, whether public or private. The system is widely different within each of the country's 50 states, with differing funding ability, district rules, and state assessments. With students of all economic, social, racial, cultural, and emotional levels in the walls of the school, the education system's flaws can largely affect the future adults it holds. Students of color are largely placed in sociocultural restraints through stereotypes when it comes to discipline. The school-to-prison pipeline is a large-based issue that students can face. It is defined as when children are funneled out of public schools and into the juvenile and criminal justice systems. Many of these children have learning disabilities or histories of poverty, abuse, or neglect. But how? School systems, disciplinary actions, most widely known as zero tolerance, refer to strict, uncompromising, automatic punishment to eliminate undesirable behavior. Brought on by a rise of school shootings, zero tolerance soon turned to suspending students for dress code violations and drug use, to rule breaking and disruptive behavior in hopes of making schools feel more safe. Students who are victim to zero tolerance are disproportionately students of color, with 90% of school suspensions over minor infractions, and of that, 70% are Black or Hispanic students. Inequities in students' education begin to fester and overspill as social-cultural issues outweigh the possibilities for student success. School institutions with growing fears of their students' possible behavior and actions have placed into effect prison-like security mechanisms in the form of surveillance systems, drug-sniffing dogs, metal detectors, and school resource officers over the past few decades. These extreme disciplinary actions to students has been researched to hold negative outcomes, including lower levels of attendance, self-esteem, academic performance, and graduation, as well as higher levels of anxiety, dropout, delinquency, victimization, and arrest. But why is the school system targeting students of color when it comes to harsh disciplinary actions? Society and institutionalized racism with the United States is to blame. Research indicates that violent crime and youth crime is dramatically overrepresented, as Black and Latinos are overrepresented as offenders and underrepresented victims, and interracial crime, especially crimes involving white crimes, is overreported. Beyond overrepresentation as criminals, African American offenders are depicted in a more negative way than their white counterparts. Blacks are most likely to be seen on TV news as criminals. They are 4 times more likely than whites to be seen in a mugshot, twice as likely to be shown in physical restraints, and 2 times less likely to be identified by name. Black suspects are also depicted as more poorly dressed and were much less likely to speak than white suspects, reinforcing the notion that they were indistinct from non-criminal blacks. For those students who fall into the pipeline and who enter the juvenile justice system face many barriers to their re-entry into traditional schools. The vast majority of these students never graduate from high school. However, others argue that data shows that students, whether white or Black or Hispanic, violate school discipline in more or less the same proportion. In turn, the argument turns to collateral consequences of the school-to-prison pipeline to extend beyond the overrepresentation of students that are Black or of color in the juvenile justice system. They ask that the people account for the disparity in school discipline as a risk factor for the gap in economic achievement between white students and Black students. As an educator, it is my responsibility to be aware of such inequities in our societal views and set rules that influence school systems. As a young, white, and middle-class woman, I will never know what it is like to be a person of color, but in my classroom, I can help end disciplinary reactions. Getting to know my students, reviewing the school's policies, having a set classroom rule list that ensures respect and open communication with both the student and their parent or guardian, and establishing relationships with my students are all strategies I will explore. I cannot change if my school district has a zero tolerance policy in place, but I can advocate for my students and create a safe environment for them to continue to grow academically and social emotionally.